Picking up where the first one left off, Spider-Man 2 has the same level of camp as the first one, I would say. And if anything, the dialogue is even more cheesy. And I love it. These movies are they're so fucking fun. And I think that's why they're so beloved, because they don't take themselves seriously for the most part. Like I said in the first review, sometimes they do, but for the most part, they know they're cheesy. They don't try to hide it. And I think that's very endearing. And obviously, the nostalgia does play a part in it, as anything, any movie that you watch that's, kind of you have fond memories of. You can't really take off your rose-tinted goggles. Like, you're always gonna have a soft spot for these movies. I think most people have a soft spot for the Raimi trilogy, but these are still good movies. The thing about these movies, though, is they still paint Spider-Man as this massively struggling character in really all the facets. And honestly, I could respect that because it's accurate to the lore. And some of these Spider-Man movies, they don't necessarily highlight that aspect too much. Like, they don't highlight the everyday existential dread. They highlight like the big events, the big villains, that kind of, the shit with Gwen Stacy that happens in Amazing Spider-Man, like in Far From Home with Mysterio. Like, there's a lot of shit that happens to these characters, but there's no movie quite like Spider-Man 2 specifically that highlights how miserable Peter is on a regular basis, bro. This dude is miserable. And it also feels very real because this dude is always late everywhere and he just lives a really shitty life because of what he does. And I feel like Tobey's rendition, again, is the one that renders that embodies that idea the most. No other Spider-Man seem like they have such a shitty life more than Tobey, and I don't know if that's a good thing, but it works for whatever the purposes of this movie are. It works, man. And really, everyone in this movie is massively struggling. It's kind of fucked up, to be honest. What's also fucked up is how Peter loses his powers because of his mood. I've never really understood that. When I used to watch Spider-Man 2 when I was a kid, I never really understood, and they never really explain it too well. They just kind of say like, oh, it's in your head. It's like a mental block. But they never said that his powers have been tied to his mental state, and it's not like it makes the movie better or worse. If anything, it just kind of pads the movie a little bit, adds some scene here or there where he deals with the mental state problem, mental block, I guess, but it doesn't make the movie better or worse, and it doesn't add anything to the movie. That's not one of the things I remember when I think of Spider-Man 2. If anything, I always kind of forget that it's there. When I remember it, I'm like, oh, okay. But I do understand to some extent, because they really pile it on during the gala or whatever it was. It was back to back, bro. Like, it was Harry, it was Mary Jane getting married. Like, it's bad. Oh, speaking of Mary Jane, I also forgot to mention this in the review for the first Spider-Man, but I really don't like MJ in these movies, and especially in Spider-Man 2. And I'm not sure how to explain it, but she's just annoying. Like, throughout the whole movie, she's just 2 times a lot, and she just generally does like just annoying shit that just pisses me off. I let it slide most of the time, but when I'm seeing scenes where like she's kissing Jonah's son in the same way that she kissed Spider-Man, when I see scenes where like she's like trying to like get back with Peter, but then she's like, oh, but I have somebody. Like, bro, what do you want, man? What do you want? Stop 2-timing and decide what you want. That shit just makes me so mad the entire movie, and I really don't like her for that. And I also hope that James Franco's instructions when playing Harry were to play the bitchiest character he possibly could, because he excels at that shit throughout the entire movie, bro. He does not stop bitching, complains the whole time, crying like a little, like, I get it, your dad's dead. You know what, when I say it like that, it sounds kind of bad, but I get it. You're going through some shit, but don't act like that. Just stop acting like that. Also, I don't got much to say about Tobey's performance. It's pretty much the same thing as Spider-Man 1. It's good, it's fine. Again, a lot of existential dread in this movie, lots of just sadness and stuff. Tobey does it pretty well. The best Spider-Man when it comes to being sad. Not sure what worth that is, but it works. But when it comes to Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, that man is a gem, bro. Most of the villains in the Raimi trilogy are just amazing, and they kind of steal the show because they're just often the best parts of their movies. To me, Dr. Octopus is one of the best villains in the Raimi trilogy. He is the best villain in the Raimi trilogy. He's the most likable. He's the most understandable. He's just like, I really, really enjoy him. And the fact that they brought his tentacles to life using practical effects rather than CG, it really does make a difference, because you can see like they feel so much more real when it's practical effects rather than CG. When it's CG, it works. Again, I commented on the CG of the first movie. It works, and the CG I feel is even better in this movie than it was in the first movie. So it works even better in this one. But the practical parts with Dr. Octopus's tentacles are something serious, bro. They are good. And how could I possibly talk about this movie without talking about one of the most iconic scenes in superhero cinema?
Pizza time.
No, but actually, the train scene is timeless, and it'll always be timeless. Like it's just so iconic, and it's been recreated in other forms of media too. Just think Spider-Man, like the PS5 Spider-Man or PS4 Spider-Man. It's just so iconic. But my only problem with it, and low-key, this problem also happens in the first movie. There's a lot of religious talk in this movie, which is kind of jarring because you don't really see that anymore. A lot of shit are more like, they don't really mention religion all that much, right? A lot of like blockbuster movies that kind of go all around the world, they try to be like PC. They try not to talk about, you know, inclusive things. Exclusive things. They try to be inclusive for everybody. And the Jesus allegory for Spider-Man in that train scene is a little strong, but it is what it is. It doesn't bother me too much, but it's just that Spider-Man really isn't a flawless character in this movie. Like, they spend the whole movie putting that on full display, so I really don't understand why he's being compared to Jesus. Like, I don't know. It didn't make a difference. It really didn't make a difference. My enjoyment of the movie was the same. I love this movie, but you know, it's just being a little bit older and seeing that, I kind of realized things that I didn't realize when I was younger, and it's just something that I don't really understand why it had to be there all that much. But again, it doesn't take away from the enjoyment of the movie, because I love this movie, and as a result, I will give it an A. It's not an A+, it's not quite the perfect movie in my opinion, but it's damn close. It's one of the best Spider-Man movies ever, and it's going to be really hard to top it.